this digital realm where we reside, with the rhythm of the future amplifying our drive. Artificial intelligence taking control, heightened senses expanding our very soul. AI takes us higher.
Luke Fischer, welcome to hAIghtened Senses.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Luke, your background, well, echoes a little bit with Christo's, but it's a big, long service there in the military. And I guess there are connections that have stayed with you. You're doing lots of work still with military causes. So before we talk about SkyFi and the cool stuff you're doing with imagery, let's talk a little bit about the formative years of your career, what you were doing there. How did your early life start? What got you into the military? What were you doing?
Yeah, the origin story, I guess. Yeah, so I grew up in Ashland, Wisconsin, which is a super small farming town on Lake Superior. As far north as you can go, central of the state, super small. I knew nothing about the Army. I didn't even know the Army had helicopters. I didn't know about West Point, nothing.
You should be in the Air Force, surely.
Yeah. But my mom worked at the high school. And so when all the paperwork and graduation stuff came around, she's like, hey, fill out this ROTC scholarship. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what that is. So I think I just signed my name. Like, sounds good. And I got an ROTC scholarship for the Army. I visited and joined the first school I got a tour of, which was Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. Just because a girl that graduated a year ahead of me got an ROTC scholarship. It was in Cincinnati. It wasn't small town Wisconsin. And I went there. I was like, this works. Yeah. So that was the extent of my college prep and tour. And then really got involved in ROTC. Liked it, started learning more about it. But then 9/11 happened my senior year of college. And normally on that path for ROTC, you kind of do 4 to 6 years and serve, not much really going on. There was really no wars going on. Well, that all changed. And usually in ROTC 2, your senior year, you usually find out in the fall before Christmas what you're going to do in the Army so you can plan and prep and get ready to move and do that. Well, the plane that hit the Pentagon hit the ROTC area as well.
Okay.
So it delayed everything. So it was April and we were graduating in May when the list came out. They go all right, here's what everyone's going to do. And the crazy thing was too, and this is my entry into the military, they sent out this list. Almost everyone got their first choice. Everyone, there's a handful of us that were going to be aviators, handful of doing all their other things, celebrating. About 3 hours later, the ROTC professors, they sent out the wrong list.
Oh my goodness.
Nationally. So 3,000 cadets got the wrong list. And so they sent out the next one. Almost everybody's changed. I was the only one that got aviation. And there were some of the other guys I was with and gals were going to be aviators. Their dads were aviators or moms were aviators. And they had already called and celebrated. And they're like, never mind, I'm going to be a military police officer. I'm going to go in the infantry. I was like, whew, I made it. Good, no change. So went to flight school, and then it was right to Iraq. Graduated flight school, got stationed at Fort Drum, New York, which is about an hour north of Syracuse, in the right on the lake. Again, couldn't escape the cold weather. It was I wanted to go to Korea and some other spots. The Army was going to Fort Drum. I'm like, where is that? And so I was flying in a attack reconnaissance helicopter called a Kiowa Warrior. So it's got a big sight on the top. It has rockets, missiles, 50 cal. So in low, supporting the ground force commander. So that first deployment, I went to Mosul, Iraq for a year. This was in 2005. So Mosul is the second largest city in Iraq outside of Baghdad. I didn't leave that city, the boundary of the city, for a year. We'd fly in these 4-hour blocks, 24/7, reconnaissance attack, supporting the ground commander. And I remember the first time as we were training a little bit south of Mosul, ready to get in and replace the unit that was doing the work for us, because you do these year-long deployments. And so we're training. I remember me and my buddy, Jeff, were flying, and we're like, let's tune up the radio to hear what's going on in Mosul. And we turned it on. It was our first glimpse of what war was like. It was chaos. It was the helicopters were being called on the west side, then the east side, and you hear gunfire in the background, and guys screaming for help, and literally just the height of it. I'm like, all right, here we go. I was 25 at the time, in charge of a handful of the helicopters, me and my buddy Jeff, and we're like, okay. And so again, that whole year, we unfortunately, lost crews, they were shot down, some hit wires, which, in Iraq, I mean, these huge, hundreds of feet of, wires and telephone poles everywhere. They're all dust colored too. And if you've flown, you're looking down, you're trying to support the ground force, you see like, man, here's this huge stanchion of like power lines. So it was just this like immersed into this most extreme environment. But then it was all about leadership too. It was like learning like, hey, how are we going to get through this like whole year and keep the motivation up? Because it was really tough. So I did that. Came home for a year and then went right back to Iraq again. I did some more training. It was just a cycle. During that year-long break, I tried out for a special operations aviation unit called the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment out of Fort Campbell. Tried out successfully. It was a short, like 5-day trial. Like, you do some fitness stuff and, they evaluate on how you can fly a helicopter. So did that. But then I still had to go to Iraq under my regular Army days. So then I went to a spot just north of Baghdad, kind of in the middle of nowhere. It's a big base, but we'd go and support, operations kind of all over. So that was another year-long thing. Kind of the same story, pure chaos. We lost some crews, so it was really difficult to do. And you're like looking at this future, like, man, I don't know if I'm going to go am I going to go home for another year and come back again? And then in the middle of that, I got another email from a recruiter from a special operations aviation unit. They're like, hey, would you like to try out for this unit? I'm like, I already did. I already made it. Like I've got orders to it. So ended up being a different unit. So when I got done with that year-long tour, I went and joined an aviation unit in Virginia and did that for about 9 years. So really good experience, a lot of research and development, testing of weapons, a whole bunch more deployments, all over the world. So I've done dozen plus deployments, thousands of flight hours. In the special ops community, you kind of get spoiled because it's fun and it's awesome. But the lessons I learned too is you're working with the best. You're working with the people that want to be there, that volunteered to be there, that are there to like serve the nation, and like they want to be surrounded by A players only. And that selection process was much longer. So it was this, very physically intense, very, mentally, the flying skills. We had to, fly these helicopters I'd never seen before. So it was really interesting. And then it was my time to leave that community to go to the regular Army, because that's kind of the path. You go like, okay, you're in the special ops unit. If you want to keep advancing in your career, you go to the regular Army, command a unit there, and then come back to the special operations community. And I had some great choices, but in the end, looking at like dozens of deployments, married, 2 daughters at this point, I'm like, I got to take a different path, because you could see the stress on the family. So then I started working for Uber.
Yeah.
Was totally like out of the blue, but it was a buddy that I flew with. On the regular Army side, my buddy Stan, who actually lives in Austin too, was like, hey, come work for me at Uber. And I was like, nah, man, I'm good. I got like 16 years in the Army. I'm almost to the 20-year point. And then sure enough, as I did the calculus and the family stuff and like, what do I want to do with my career? I was like, okay, let's join, Uber.
But not just Uber like we took to get you driving
not
a 5-year-old today. Yeah, you were Uber Aeronautics or
it was Uber Elevate was the business unit, and I was head of flight operations for Uber. And I tell people that, they're like, head of flight operations Uber, what was it? So it was a super cool business unit, starting in like 2016 through this initiative where if you believe in electric aviation and autonomy, that's just another mode of travel. So insert that in, instead of taking a Uber car from Manhattan to JFK where it can take an hour and a half, with traffic, hop in an Uber car in Manhattan, go to the Manhattan heliport, hop in a helicopter, take a 7-minute flight, get out at JFK, Uber car picks you up and drops you off at Terminal 4. And so you save like half your time at the same cost. So that was the idea. Uber Elevate wrote this white paper based on that thesis, said, hey, if we make this, wouldn't it be great and cost efficient and, all the like the green energy and electric aviation. And so that kind of ignited this industry. And then you started seeing VC dollars flow in to all these electric aircraft and all the bits and pieces that would be required to make that infrastructure work. And so so I did that for about 2 years, and I was part of a team that set up what was called Uber Copter in New York City. And it was that exact thing. We used regular helicopters. The hard part was, connecting the technology where it's easy to have a car pick you up and drop you off at the heliport, and then you can hop in a helicopter, get dropped off again and wait for a car. But having just go, I want to go to Terminal 4 and I live in Manhattan and press go, and a car picks you up and it's all sequenced. So you just like walk from the car into the helicopter, out of the helicopter into the car. So how does the car know to wait for you there? Because obviously you're waiting, it defeats the time. So it's then those transition times that were really important for us to get down. So all the lessons learned from that, super fun. And I was like, I want to do a little bit more. I want to get like closer to the action. So I joined one of those electric aviation companies called Joby in Santa Cruz, California. And they're, it's between them and Archer are the leaders in the world right now. They have these beautifully designed, super quiet, super efficient electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft. So they take off vertically, transition forward like an airplane. And then when it comes time to land again, come down, and watching them fly. I was coordinating flight testing.
The videos.
As a helicopter pilot, anyone involved in aviation, you're like, this should be so loud, I can't think right now. And you can have a conversation like this, and it's hovering 100 feet away. It breaks your mind. You're just like, this is it. This is amazing. So it's super fun. Those aircraft this year is a big year. There's a bunch of stuff going on in the Middle East, to get them in operations, a bunch of, hopefully in the US as well. Unfortunately, I think the FAA just moves so slow where they're trying to certify these, or the Middle East is like, come on over. Like, we'll get them into operations. So that's what a lot of the companies are doing. So I think we can fix that. And then I was like, I actually want to do my own thing. So I joined a venture capital firm as an entrepreneur in residence. We are investing in space, autonomy, machine learning, and cyber. And then I met through the Uber network, my co-founder, Bill Perkins, who was trying to buy satellite imagery at the time, had this idea of SkyFi, like, let's make it easy for the world. And we met right at that time as it was formed, and I was like, cool, let's do this. And that's been about 3+ years now. Obviously, we'll talk a lot about SkyFi too.
Yeah, it's a really interesting space, because I think I still remember when the first kind of Google Earth things were coming into public domain. Before that, my dad, in his earliest career, was a land surveyor, and he would sometimes bring home those old stereoscopic 3D pictures of things for us to play with. But nothing really happened for normal people. You'd hear stories of the American satellites can see the brand of cigarette you're smoking. And right. We never saw it until Google Earth, and there was great excitement, and it suddenly became normal. And now all of a sudden you kind of expect, like, come on, Google, like,
why isn't it?
It's still the people who sold me the house. It's their car in the driveway. Still. Why is it not me?
Keep it up.
It's a weird time, and now thousands of satellites flying, drones, aircraft, all sorts. So, talk to us a little bit about SkyFi, like the gap, I guess, that you saw to fill, and then a little bit of like 101 on what's happening up there. What's
going on up there. So SkyFi, at the base, we're an Earth intelligence platform company. And what we do is we sell geospatial imagery and analytics through these scalable data platforms that we built, plural data platforms. And we sell to global customers, enterprise users all over the world, and governments. The U.S. government is and will be for quite some time the largest purchaser of geospatial imagery and analytics. That's also part of the problem why we were created, is because in order to get the technology, like you're saying, if you were to talk to a satellite company before SkyFi, you're negotiating sales and price and explaining your use case and talking to humans on and on and on, sometimes for weeks and months, where we live in a day and age now, you can get anything delivered to your front door. Like I was just talking about, I could push a button and get a helicopter flight in 2 cars to get me to my destination, but I still have to talk to a human to get an image. So when, Bill had this, pain point he saw when he was trying to buy satellite imagery for his hedge fund, it took him months. Like he was trying to buy $500K, $1 million. And people would be like, well, how much are you going to buy next year? He's like, I don't know, but I want to give you $1 million to get image as fast as possible. We're like, well, let's talk and negotiate. And we're like, oh my gosh, like how hard can this be? And so we did it. And so we, it's through this web and mobile application that we have. So that's how people interact with us. If you want to talk to us, cool, you can talk to us, but you can push a button, get a satellite image. We have, we have a web and mobile version as well. So 70% of our users are on web because they're usually at work, at their workstation doing it, 30% on mobile. It's important, though, to have mobile because everybody has a cell phone. So that's just the easy way to do it. It's not just about the current customers, it's about the future customers as well. Everyone's pushing to mobile. So it's really hard. People have tried to do it in the past and just didn't have like the culture of the team and the product understanding to do it. So we've just succeeded and moved faster than anyone to do it.
So the big problem that you're then solving is just the time takes to get an image.
That's it.
Which was the big
access.
hurdle.
It was. Yeah. Because when people need information, they need it now. They won't wait 3 months. And then the big problem too was you could get a contract, but you're going to pay a lot of money because it was typically only sold these imagery, basically buckets of imagery over annual contracts. So it costs, tens and hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions, just to start playing in the industry, where sometimes people just need one image a year. And sometimes it's free. We're like, great. Well, if that solves your pain point, that's how you grow the industry. And that's what our mindset was. So the business model is we partner with all these satellite companies, partner with analytic companies, and just have this web and mobile application allows it, to our customers to very efficiently and easily and kind of enjoyable experience to get the technology they need, whether that's tasking a satellite, looking back years into archive, or applying the analytics, which are the so what, like building count, moisture content of soil, vessel detection, mineral detection, stuff you guys are doing, with the crops and like what is happening in the world. So now for the first time, really anyone has the ability to get online, task a satellite. It's a couple button presses. Like years ago, like when your dad was doing the survey stuff, you'd have told him that, he'd be like, it's crazy. Science, it's magic. It can't happen. And here we are.
Yeah.
Luke, in terms of the resolution, because Brandon was talking about like when we were in high school, primary school, they said, yeah, these American spy satellites could see us like a cigarette packet on the ground.
Yeah.
Like in reality, how accurate or not accurate is it?
Yeah, there's some physics involved. So when we talk about the accuracy, so there's very big difference between satellite imagery and then, things like drone and stratospheric balloon imagery where they're not having to go through the atmosphere. So currently on the platform, we have stratospheric balloons. They get down to about 7 centimeters per pixel. So now you're definitely competing with drones, what you think of like when you fly a DJI drone or whatever, on like that sort of imagery. Yeah. Problem with balloons is they're slow and they don't scale really easily, and you don't have these big swaths of imagery that you can take. They're so cool.
It's so fun cool that they're coming back.
Yeah, they're coming back. Bunch of use cases for the military where soldiers can now put in, essentially balloons in their backpacks, throw them up. They're dispensable, but you can get this, amazing imagery where now you're not having a really expensive drone and or a human flying something to get you that intelligence for it. So satellites, right now, there's a company that we're partnering with called Albedo out of Colorado. They just launched 4 weeks ago, whenever it was, the world's first 10 centimeter resolution from satellites. So now we're getting in this space like, okay, this is going to be comparable to drones. Like they're very new. They've just got one for a while, but others are going to come. So you just see this evolution. If you go over decades, it used to be just like you're saying, spy satellites, seeing a pack of cigarettes, which you can't really do. It's like 4 centimeters, I think, is what the physics say, like the tightest resolution you can get. I tend to don't believe any of that because people find a way to make it better. There's definitely some military technologies that are great. Usually those from drones or, really high altitude planes and stuff. But you look back and we're going, it used to be just these billion-dollar bespoke assets in space that only the scientists, military, intelligence agency use. Now my teenage daughters can task a satellite while they're eating their breakfast. That just and it's only getting faster and cheaper thanks to Elon Musk. We're pretty soon going to have, like high school kids able to afford launching a satellite in space, and that's how it should be.
Yeah. I mean, it is so. I mean, if you look back at the previous generations, I think it's only 100 years, or whatever, from the first manned flight to the man on the moon to private space flight. It's incredible when you think about it, and when you look at all the private launches that are happening now, it's super exciting. As you said, like we use some of that sort of imagery as well, but once you've got that high level view and you can look over big areas of time. Yeah. And it's just suddenly immediately available.
And people get spoiled. They're like, why isn't it better resolution? Why isn't it faster? We're trying, we're trying, So,
Luke, if we can go a little bit back into your story, in terms of operating in the military, especially with special forces.
Like special operations. Big difference. Yeah, big difference. Yeah. Okay. And I'll explain it, but very common,
In terms of that, you're working with the best of the best, like you said. How does the transition going into like civilian life, how has that been for you, and sort of what lessons have you learned there that you can take into your current job?
Really good question. I think at first so used to operating in this team that believes in this one mission, A players. It's not about money. I couldn't even tell you how much I got like paid in the military. I didn't even look at. I'm like, there's no like, I need a raise, boss. That's just not a thing. Like, just not a thing. And so when it came down to like transitioning from Uber, and I went very quick. I didn't have this like year-long transition like most folks do in the U.S. Army or U.S. military, where you like do your resume and talk to people and interview. I went from like literally a week. I was like, got it approved to get out, and I joined Uber the next week. So zero transition. That included like all the medical stuff and turning in my gear. It was all just like chaos. And oh, by the way, it was over the 4th of July weekend, and so it was really tough. But then you just kind of thrust into this thing where you know, just in your mind, you're used to like selfless service, mission first, and then coming to Uber. Uber's a great company, but again, you can see just the different motives people have. It's about money, you know, and about career advancement. So that was a shock, you know, because you're kind of under this impression like it's going to be the same. So, you know, it took me a while to learn, but, you know, had a great team at Uber. And then I think I've seen it too, a case study with veterans specifically, is it's about the third-ish job where they kind of figure it out. Because you go to the first job out of the military and you're like, eyes wide open. You're like, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be great. I'm going to do this for 20 years. And like, no one does a job for 20 years anymore. It's like 3 to 5 maybe. And they make some mistakes. They're like, oh, it's going to be just like the military. I'm going to join this awesome team. It's going to be great. And they get there and be like, man, I didn't know I was going to be working for a 31-year-old, you know, kid who just got his MBA. And I've, you know, been in the military for 20 years. It's just a common thing where just like, you just got to shift your mind a little bit. And I don't know how many times I've seen it too, you know, folks that were like commanders in the military get out and they expect their job is to be like, I'm going to have a staff of people that do the work for me and I'm going to strategize and just direct people. It's like, now you're going to make the PowerPoint slides and you're going to like, you know, take out the garbage and make the coffee. It's just kind of starting over for it. But there's some phenomenal transition programs that are out there now that help with that. Like the Honor Foundation is a really good one that I do some coaching with as well, where they do that. They do these crash courses, you know, for a couple months and teach folks, primarily special operations, like, here's what you're going to get into. Here's how you interview. Here's how you do a resume. And then so the lessons I really took, it was on the team. When I was starting SkyFi, I was like, okay, now this is my thing. It very similar to special operations, I think startups are. We're in the special operations community. So I was joking about special forces stuff. Special forces is a branch in the Army, just like field artillery, infantry, aviation. Then you have special operations, the umbrella term, which, you know, can be Navy SEALs and Rangers and the aviation stuff and all kinds of stuff. So the umbrella term. But in special operations, you have these seemingly impossible tasks that no one has done before, and the job is to go figure it out. So you hire the best people to do that. Like the aviation unit I was in, it wasn't about flying the helicopter. It was about, we'll use helicopters, whatever we need to find to go do the mission. Sometimes it's big helicopters, sometimes it's small. And so with startups, it's that same thing. You're like, we're going to do something that no one's done before. A lot of people say it can't be done, and it's really difficult. And you just find the right people that go, cool, we can figure this out. So that's the big lesson I learned, is like hiring the right team. And there's some trial and error, and you get some people on the bus that, you know, don't necessarily need to be on there after a little while. So you just modify it. But overall, it's about the team. And then I thought it was like this really like squishy stuff. You know, I went to business school. I was on active duty and like about like values and culture. I'm like, who cares about that? But it's super important. Like, employees don't like wake up and read the company values every day, but like you build a culture that understands the value. You know, for SkyFi, what we really focus on is speed. You know, you have A players, it's speed, and then it's rapid and candid feedback to each other. You know, we're to break down the walls. We're a remote company only, so there's difficulties in communicating with each other because we're not all in the office and people assume this. But I go like, feedback is a gift. Like, treat the feedback you get as a gift, not like personal. And I'm like, it's not a nice to have for employees to give each other feedback. It's a requirement. Because if you're not doing it, because we've all been in organizations where it's like, hey, so-and-so isn't really doing the work they're doing, and they like talk around and stuff. I'm like, well, did you talk to him and tell him no? I'm like, well, why are you telling me? Because I always say too, if it comes to me, and people are like, I don't know how to solve this problem, I go, okay, am I going to fire you or this person? Because that means you guys can't solve it. You know, usually people are like, okay, I get the point. I should go talk to him. I'm like, yes, you should go talk to the person. So, yeah, so it's the team, and then the speed, and then the feedback is the big things.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about the challenges for you as a person going in from the military into civil jobs.
Yeah.
But it must also be a challenge then to lead down to create that, because as a founder, you can have that single purpose.
Yeah.
And you can have a focus, but the kid you hire out of university is just doing a job.
Yeah.
And it must be a challenge to work out, how do we instill that single vision in somebody where it's not for freedom or democracy or something big and bold. It's like, well, we're going to build
like freedom. Everyone's like, I just want to make some money. Like, have a good life. Yeah. Yeah. It's I think on that one, it's again about finding the right team, but also what you're building too. Compelling. Yeah. We're at about 40 people with SkyFi. I've had people come through the doors. I'm sure you guys have seen it too. There where you're, have really good candidates. They're like, well, I'm thinking about like either Google or SkyFi. I'm like, if that's a choice, go to Google. I can't compete on salary. I'm not going to compete on there. But if you want to go, spend the next 5 years figuring out how to, change the color of the widget on the button that optimizes search engine, go do that. Or if you want to make a really big difference in how people access tech, so it's the selling point where you find that. And some people are like, I'm going to go to Google because they no fault of their own. They're just like, I just want a good paycheck and a good life.
Oh yeah, one of the smartest guys I know. We had a relocation and they asked people who wanted to move. Nobody said yes. And then he realized, well, if I'm the only one who says yes, he'd just broken up with his long-term girlfriends. I'll say yes. These are my terms. And they said, you're crazy. He said, well, I don't want to go. Yeah. And they said, okay, fine, we'll pay you. And he went and then he took a job. He said it was the most boring job he's ever had. Barely was in the office.
Yep.
Went to the gym every day, traveled the world, and he said it's the best choice he's ever made. It's like, oh, not inspired at all.
Yeah.
But I can do it.
Exactly.
You guys all running around like crazy. I'm making good money.
Yeah.
Like, well, that's actually not a bad choice.
Everyone's got I just want to make sure those people don't come with that impression that SkyFi, like, just kind of clock you in.
That's what the big banks are for.
I actually had one person, obviously won't say the name, the individual's not at the company anymore, like doing one-on-ones and stuff. Pretty early days at SkyFi. I was like, so what you been doing? They're like, not much. Like what? Not really doing much? Like, we got all this work to do. Like, yeah, I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm like, okay, I fixed that situation pretty quick.
Luke, in terms of your time at Uber, could you just tell us, like, you said they wrote a white paper. How far did that project get?
Yeah, well, it's still alive. I think Uber took a big share of the knowledge and what it took to have a functioning business with electric aircraft. So there's a lot of science projects out there. A lot of people are like, we're making electric aircraft and drones and all this stuff. But Uber's like, well, here's how that can make money. Yeah. Here's how it can make money for Uber. So you have this big demand generator called Uber. It's the largest transportation carrier network in the world. And that white paper started in 2016 with an idea, and there were some people working on electric aircraft for a while before that for military purposes and just general people like, hey, I believe in electric aircraft. So from that, fast forward 9 years now, and we have, billions and billions of dollars of funding have been into these companies, from like major investors like Toyota took a big stake in Joby. Stellantis, big auto manufacturer, made a big bet in Archer Aviation. And so you have these major companies making these bets going, by the way, Delta made a big bet with Joby. United made a big bet with Archer. So you see these competing like companies where they're doing it like, oh, we see it, like we know how to manufacture, we know how to run airlines. Let's put these aircraft in these businesses. So it's rapidly improving. I've seen these aircraft. They're real. They're going to get certified, I think, by the end of this year, whether that's by the FAA. And that's the big milestone for all these aircraft is like, get the FAA certification, then it's off to the races. Now, everyone, like, you look at their stocks, like if you're following the stocks for the SPACs that came out in 2021 and 2022, most of them are down like 80-90%, which those electric aircraft are bundled into there, but they're doing pretty well. But it's all just like everyone's waiting to these certifications. So I think it'll be this year, maybe early next year. They're going to operate in the Middle East. I think actually today, Archer's doing a big event in New York City, like unveiling the aircraft and like demoing some stuff. So it's pretty cool. So it's absolutely real. It's absolutely going to be happening. The other thing I did too was I ran the drone delivery operation at Uber while I was there as head of flight operations. So it was the food delivery, partnered internally with Uber Eats, because the same thesis going, how can we get people their food really fast. So we did the first delivery with McDonald's in San Diego. I think it was to the mayor of a part of San Diego or something, like a Happy Meal. Yeah, it was fun and good experiment, but it wasn't about necessarily that, like food delivery. Is about how do you connect this infrastructure of aircraft in this Uber network so you can monitor it. Anyone can fly a cheeseburger across a body of water. But how do you do it where there's customers and delivery mechanisms and all the stuff on the inside? Like, how do you pay? And, what if the refund, what if they need a refund and the food's bad? Like, all of that stuff is why we experimented with.
Just on that point, like, where is that at this point in time? Is it still running?
So Uber, we shut down the drone delivery side. We're like, okay, well, let's focus on the electric aviation side. And timing, I always said I am where I am because of luck and timing. I joined Joby Aviation, and then about a year later, Joby Aviation acquired that Uber Elevate business unit. So in between that time, the drone delivery stuff was shut down because Uber is not into the hardware business, because Uber also had the advanced technologies group where they're doing self-driving. That's no longer a thing. So they're like, hey, let's let the other people do the hardwares, like the Jobys and the aviations and like Waymo here in Austin. You can take Waymo. It's so fun. It's so good.
It was amazing.
Yeah, I've taken it like 3 or 4 times. It's nice and clean and the music's good. So that's what Uber is good at, like connecting people all over the world. So the drone stuff's done. I joined Joby, and then again, that Uber Elevate business came over, a portion of the people came over. But drone delivery is a thing. I just had a buddy, I can't say the company name, just joined a major food delivery app in the US where they're starting to do drone delivery. And they're starting to do it. So you have, the Amazons, the Googles, like the big delivery companies that are still involved in it.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where nothing happens and then suddenly it's all happened. Like when you're just looking outside your window, not much changes. And I mean, we talk about SkyFi, but the sci-fi movies, flying cars have been that one promise for years, along with the hoverboards. And it's like, they're never really going to happen. And the same with self-driving cars. You tested here and there and not. And I mean, we drove with the Waymo this morning. We were talking, we said, we really want to get in one and see what it's like. And then the first Uber we ordered this morning said, hey, you've matched with us. And we drove, and I'm an easy passenger. I argue with my wife that she's too observant a passenger. She says I'm not the very good driver. Both of those might be true, but I don't mind who's driving. It doesn't bother me too much. But as soon as you try and think through the complexities of making that work, it becomes so complicated. And if you think about this, what little tiny steps are they doing that's more than just, your car was self-drive and somebody there just in case, that last little bit. It's not surprising it took so long, but the experience today, other than one bit where we were going downhill and the car's having to try and not speed.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, well, that's kind of a road design issue more than no human would not speed there. Of course, you'd go a little bit over the speed limit, and it was a bit jerky, but the experience was fantastic. And we took a human Uber after that.
Right.
It was a lot more questionable.
Exactly.
The life choices.
Sometimes you're like, wait a minute. I like it when it's like, I don't talk to anyone. Just do my thing. Now you got a driver who's like, where are you from? I'm like, oh man, I just kind of want to do my ride. But the economics, same thing with aviation, the electric aviation world, the economics work when you pull the pilots out. And those things are autonomous, not autonomous, but they're remotely piloted at some point now. So it's actually harder to put the human in from a risk level, because you can test them and do everything all remotely piloted. If it crashes, it's like, well, it sucks, but a human didn't die. So now these aircraft, the big phase, a lot of these electric aircraft companies are in is like, okay, let's put the pilot in and prove it's safe for the FAA. Because the FAA is like, you can do whatever you want without a pilot in it. Go out in the middle of nowhere, go on a big test range. If they crash, which some have, it's not good. But then if you try to get that same approval with a human, it's like, oh no, let's talk about this for a couple years first. So
in terms of the different industries you've worked through, they all got a sort of thread in there. Aviation. What have you found in looking back at all of them that the military played a good foundation in?
Yeah. Boy, I think there's a really common thing. One, I realized probably for the first time that you said that, I was like, I like doing the really hard stuff. Like I get bored really easy. Like there were some times where I was like at Uber where it was a little slow. I'm like, boy, I'm really bored. Really bored. So I like doing the exciting, challenging stuff where I'm just like working all day. I'm like, cool, I got to get some sleep and I'm excited to wake up again. So that's been a thing. Like, I think it comes down to like the dopamine hit too, because in the Army, I'd fly in helicopters. I did the military free fall skydiving stuff and shooting. It was just part of the job. And then when that ends, you're like, but I still need the dopamine. I still need like the exciting stuff. And so I found that doing my own thing. And I think that's what the real lesson was. At Uber, I was never, I could change a little bit, but it's a huge, tens of thousands of people on this one path. And I was like, if I'd be like, hey, we should do this, they'd be like, yeah, cool. The train doesn't stop moving. But I think
it's so interesting to hear that. Like you think like sort of we're building Uber's flying parts. And it's like, it's not quite innovative enough for me. I had to get a bit more than that.
Yeah, I need to be.
I worked in banks for 20 years. I could change the credit card every now and again.
Changing people's lives. I don't know. But I think it came down to the lessons learned of like just the basic, here's the mission, here's the people that we need, here's the resources. Timelines are a big thing, which I remember on, as a like kind of a big, thought where we're going to some conference for SkyFi. There's a team of us and, we're prepping for it. And I'm like, what's a timeline? Like, when are we meeting? They're like, oh, it's a good idea. I'm like, let's just basic in my mind. Like, we show up at this time, we plan at this time, we do this. And I think the military just ingrains in you like, you show up on time. Here's the timeline, know everyone that's going on and tell everyone what's going on. So that was a big thing for the military. I think that, and then just the, sometimes you just have to make hard decisions. And I've seen faults, at Uber, at Joby, working for other people where they didn't make the hard decision. You should make this decision. Like, they don't want to be looked at as being, too rough or too mean and whatever. And then the decision's not made and you see it in those decisions. Sometimes there's really no right answer. You just have to make a decision to get it going. So that's where I take a lot of that now going, I have enough information, like, here's what we're going to do. And then the team's like, roger that.
Yeah. But I think also in a big organization, if the mistake is going to cost some money, it's the organization's money. If I'm the one who has to make a big decision, it's my reputation. Yeah. So it's often, 50-50. Well, I'm not that worried if it's the wrong one, and it's easier to delay a decision when it's your money. It's a little bit more incentive. But I want to talk a bit more about SkyFi because we spoke about like the imagery, and you mentioned like one of the driving sources was a hedge fund manager, which is not the sort of person we sit around thinking, oh, hedge funds, they're always looking at satellite images. So talk to me a little bit, one about that if you'd like, but more generally, like what sort of people are benefiting from having this super access to this imagery?
I think we're at this inflection point. When I was looking at starting a company in, I guess it was 2021, before I met Bill Perkins from the hedge fund side, who was thinking about SkyFi and starting SkyFi, I was thinking about autonomous vehicles because that's the world I came from. I was like, well, if you partner with the Teslas and the Jobys and the Archers and the drone companies of the world, by the fact they're autonomous, they're collecting large amounts of data. So partner with them and then sell that data because they're mapping the world. So I was like, oh, cool. Bill's like, we should do satellites. I'm like, cool. Bill's also got a lot of money. So we did satellites for it. But, his thing, Bill is always forward leaning as a hedge fund guy. Always, what's the greatest technology? He was building like supercomputers to get just a little bit of edge on the weather. Because if you just know a little bit more than your competitors, then you can make more money. So he's always looking at it. And then he he was doing the satellite imagery, trying to buy it. And so that's where the process came from. But, what we're really doing is we're at this inflection point, like I was saying over the last couple of years, thanks to Elon Musk, it's getting so easy to get to space. And I say that kind of flippantly, it's still really hard. But relatively speaking, more satellites being created, more analytic companies being created. And our mission was like, well, how do you manage it all now? Now, like back in the days when there was just a couple of the spy satellites up and, the nerds at NGA or NRO were like managing it, great, and doing it for military intelligence purposes. But now you just have so much data that you can't just have all these disparate connections, all the different providers, and you can't talk to 10 different salespeople and manage contracts. Just come to this one-stop shop platform. And I kind of liken it to Netflix, where everybody likes Netflix because it's comedy, drama, thriller. You just go to Netflix as a user. You're not negotiating with the movie studio. And all the movie studios like that because that's where all the customers are, so they pump content there. Same with us, where you get all the different types of satellite imagery, SAR, thermal, and hyperspectral, and EO. All the satellite companies like pumping their content to us because we go, hey, we're going to grow your market faster than you can organically. And the customers don't care. They don't care if it comes from Planet or Maxar or Umbra. They're just like, I just need my mission. Like, done. I don't care where it comes from. Just like, you don't go like, I only watch Warner Brothers movies. Like, no, of course not. Most people don't even know that. So,
well, it's worth also pausing there a little bit because, we spoke about imagery and I used the analogy of like Google Maps or Google Earth, but it's not just the picture that we think of, the bird's eye view. There's hundreds of different, there's a whole range of different things you can sense and detect from there. So what sort of, when you talk about imagery, what is it that you're actually able to share with the buyer?
Yeah. So we send them a full metadata package. So you're going to, on your SkyFi account, you're going to be able to, get the TIFF and the GeoJSONs, like everything a geospatial expert would need. And then when it comes to electro-optical, most people think like, oh, it's a picture. Well, there's so much data in that, even the electro-optical 30-centimeter image that you have, that's where the computers need to start taking over. And that's where we're going. That's where I see a lot more value. We're still in this phase of like, we can launch satellites and we can get imagery from it. I'm going, yeah, cool. Imagery will always tell a story. It's always going to be powerful, but the advanced imagery, the synthetic aperture radar, the thermal, the hyperspectral, the LiDAR stuff that's coming, that's where you need the computers to go, here's what's in this. Because you look at a SAR image over a port and you're like, looks like boats here maybe, but like what are they and what's classification? So with us, we go, hey, we're going to partner with the best analytic companies in the world and probably start making our own because we know all the customer needs better than anyone, and go, here's what it is. You say, I want to know vessel detection. So you hit buy, and then you get a report that goes, here's your image, but here's what's in it, and here's the report. That's where the real power comes from. Like Bill was looking at, fracking crews in the Permian Basin to look at which well pads are on, and you can determine and like inference, and obviously he's making money off of the bets he's making off of that, but that's the so what. So it's this difference of the rich data that's coming because it's only getting more.
So like the more information someone has, the better decision they can take. It doesn't matter.
Power.
It doesn't matter what industry you're in,
Yeah, there's some famous stories from, I guess, the hedge fund sort of world where looking at the pictures of the factories and then seeing how many trucks are coming in and out, and then I started parking trucks there. But that's why, like, you can measure all sorts of things. Is that room actually hot? Is there actual work going on? And the European Space Agency, the data you can go on. I think only if you're in Europe, you can access the data for free. And I thought, great.
Yeah. And that's what we have too. So we partnered, we didn't partner, the Sentinel and Landsat programs for European Space Agency and then the US, where we go, this imagery is paid for by the taxpayers. So it should be free.
Yeah.
Well, just because it's free does not mean it's accessible. So we made it accessible. Yeah. So you can go to SkyFi. That's why I was like, it should be free. Put it on the SkyFi platform. It's great for people to get it because otherwise, like, you're having to code and like register. We're like, that's not how this is designed.
Yeah, because I teach a data visualization course. So like, I'll show some satellite stuff, and then I logged on. I signed up an account, and then I went and I was asking which satellite, what level, which sensor, and it's got all this cool stuff, pollution levels, all sorts. But it's telling me parts per million of air. I don't know what any of this means.
And it's probably in like an Amazon S3 bucket and you're filtering for, you're like, I just want the thing. Like, now.
So it's like, you can start like, oh, this would be really cool to know. Okay, but I don't know how to interpret it unless you came up through that field. So it's really cool to have that layer on that says this is what it's showing.
Just making it easy. And well, it was really fun too when we're building the company, we consider ourselves like a user experience company, a UX company that just happens to be in the geospatial world. We, like myself, I didn't come from the geospatial world. The team didn't. Most of my engineers, my head engineer came from ex-Uber, so we understand product and scale. But then we consulted with the former director of UX at Fortnite, the video game. Like that's our mindset of going like, how do you make it a beautifully designed, engaging application that people want to use? So that's where like a lot of the difference is. Because people are like, well, I'm going to hire a geospatial team. Well, then you get down that path of like, well, here's the resolution and the revisit rate and blah. People are like, I don't care. Like, I just want the thing. So just get it. So,
well, speaking of that, like, where would people go if they wanted to?
Yeah. So you go to app.skyfi.com right now, app.skyfi.com, SKYFI.com. That where you don't even have to create an account. You can start browsing and searching as soon as you want to start buying stuff or even the free stuff. You just have to register. That's it. Because we're a U.S. entity. There are laws about like who can purchase and whatnot. So you can go there. But what's also interesting is you can not only get the imagery, but the analytics. And we describe it very well too. And then also very interesting is you can also go to maxr.skyfi.com or planet.skyfi.com. We build, operate, and maintain those companies' digital storefronts for it because they realize like they have to scale faster. They can't just rely on these, commission-based sales folks to do all their deals. They have to up the level of the deals and all the stuff goes to us for the self-serving. So that's really new. Maxar is just turning on this week. Planet's been live for the last couple of weeks and growing. So those companies trusted us to go like, hey, build it, operate it, maintain it. And we do. And then we've got we've got more companies that want it too.
Awesome. I'll put those links in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So Brendan sort of touched upon it in terms of your customers. Who are they and what do they need?
Yeah, boy, good question. I'll get into some of the use cases because some of them are wild. We hear new use cases every day. It's really two big buckets, government and then commercial across the world. So the government, we do work with the Space Force right now. We're very similar. They have the data problem that the commercial world does where there's more satellites being launched. How do you manage all in one-stop shop, the analytics? So we've got some good work with the U.S. government that can't talk too much about, but just think it's the same problem. Everyone in the world's like, there's so much commercial stuff coming up. And what's really interesting is the commercial technology is outpacing the government technology, where there's more satellites being launched. Again, my teenage daughters can task a satellite, but a soldier on the battlefield with the technology they're given cannot. And that's a problem. So that's where we're solving that. And then on the commercial side, so we have, it's everything from, big enterprise users that are in the agriculture business that, one of the use cases we get is, or we've solved and helped this company with is they look at major livestock farms, what cows are standing versus laying down to see if they're fed well enough because that company, is the one supplying the food to these farmers. So that's hedge funds, of course, are looking at, crop yields and production and facilities, LNG facilities, liquid natural gas. Pool manufacturers contact us. They want to know what neighborhoods have pools, what don't, so they can target market those. You can get in vessel detection, port, flow rates, things like Singapore. We work with Singapore a lot. It's one of the largest ports in the world. We're looking at what's in the port, what vessels, how can they optimize the flow. On and on and on. Again, and some drone delivery stuff too, and self-driving cars. We get, folks that are trying to identify hey, can we see all the Waymo cars in, Phoenix or wherever they are? Can we see if the roofs are flat so we can know if we can do a drone delivery at, various restaurants? So literally, this is all, I think, in the last week, just top of my mind use cases.
So I know taking some of those real dirty manual jobs like the exploration for minerals, where you would have gone and literally just dug a hole, sort of sifted through, seen, I found a little bit of gold, okay, we can dig a really big hole here or not. And to be able to just scan these vast areas is just been a step change.
And we did a thing with Neil deGrasse Tyson, where they're looking at illegal mining. We, got some imagery and worked with that team for a while, months and months. It's a really good podcast about exposing what's going on with the illegal mining. And yes, you want to, get in the hands of the big mining companies. How can they operate more efficiently so it's better for the environment? Then you also expose the ones that are doing illegally and they're just literally stripping the earth and they don't care. And so that was a really cool one on the mining stuff.
Luke, how timely are these images?
So if you're tasking an asset like a satellite, the answer is it always depends. Synthetic aperture radar doesn't really care about the weather. It can see through clouds. So we've gotten that, in a couple of hours. Just depends on if you hit the orbit at the right time. And this is on the commercial side. Electro-optical, again, based on the clouds, depends, can be same day. If it's cloudy over an area, you're going to have to wait till the clouds aren't there. We're not going to charge you for it, of course. But then if you look at the historical imagery, sometimes that delivers in minutes, because we just pull from the provider's database and deliver it to you. For it. So, but I mean, that used to be months and weeks, and now we're at like hours, days, minutes, and then it's going to be like minutes and hours. It's like, what do you mean I can't get my satellite image within the next hour? Like, what is this? That's where that's where I want the customers to start complaining about. That'll be success.
And in terms of future projects, visions, you mentioned squeezing that time frame in. And what might you allude to?
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I say we don't have an AI initiative. And I don't say AI because of hype. What we do at SkyFi is like, there's a lot of companies like, we do AI for satellite imagery. And it's just like a chat bot on top of their knowledge base, which really isn't interesting. We're making it so our user interface right now is like, you go in, if you want an image, you're dragging and dropping a box and like specifying resolutions, where now it just becomes a semantic search. Like, I want a image of the St. Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea to determine blah, blah, blah. You type that in, and then it does it for you, tasks for you. I want our capabilities to do the work for our customers. I want to kind of put the GIS folks out of a job of what their normal job is and have them really go in the evaluation side, not just like, how do I get imagery? That we need to solve that, and it has to be within seconds that's solved. So that's where we're going.
Oh, wow. I think what's exciting with that is just, well, one, for those sort of people, they didn't get into GIS because they wanted to spend their whole day coding complicated programs. They loved understanding when the wind blows this way, the soil erodes in that way.
And they love it too. They love the
they all talk all day. So I don't think that's the problem. But I love how much innovation this sort of stuff can spur. And as I said, I was overwhelmed when I tried to look at the satellite imagery and I'll just take an example online and use that. But I was working with some weather data, very simple weather data, but I found a place I can go and I can get 40 odd years of hour by hour weather. And it was just so much fun. And I have no real thing to do with it other than building some charts for my class. But that sort of having that data available and at your fingertips where you can go back, how's this changed? Could I see this? Well, what might I learn from how my hometown's changed over the last 20 years? Would I have been able to detect these things I know from living there? What's going to do? There's so much opportunity to then spin off, and that is a global view. If you're interested, illegal mining in some sort of in West Africa, somewhere you could never physically get. Well, I can start exploring that because I don't have to get there.
Yeah.
I can see that data for whatever area I'm interested in.
And we, today, actually, the report came out on Newsweek, where we exposed with a group out of Stanford, China putting in this big, huge, like steel rig near Korea. And like they're kind of expanding their boundaries and claiming territory. So that just blew up today too. So it's this like open source intelligence community that's going like, hey, we can use SkyFi to do this and expose. And so for the first time now space doesn't have boundaries. You can just see whatever you want. So we're just illuminating what's going on in the world. And that's what I think is really, really powerful. Cause it's only getting more and more. And like same day too, this big report on Tesla came out that, somebody used our imagery to look at the Gigafactory here and go, well, the production rates compared to last year or this year based on how many cars in the parking lot, and you can just do it now. Like they didn't talk to us, they just did it. And that's what's great. It's super exciting.
Are there places that are off limits in the world that you cannot take pictures of?
There's not. Just like saying, space is the wild, wild west. Countries have certain restrictions. So certain countries will say, you can use our satellites, but you can't take pictures with our satellites of our country. Well, in the other country, you just go like, well, we can. And so that's what it's like, right? It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
But there's not. There's restrictions on who can purchase. That's the big thing. So we were one of the first in the industry to automate this, and we put a lot of time and money into it where, we screen sanctions lists and all the US lists and everything else that we can do to authorize who's able to be purchasing imagery for it. But as far as countries, no. Like one of the first ones, two first images I got, I know what's going on in Area 51 anyways, but I want an Area 51 one because it was like, put it online and do it because you can do it. But then February of 2022, like literally a month after we started, that's when Russia started invading Ukraine. I tasked a satellite and I was watching the buildup. I found this town just on the border, and there was a tip in somewhere in the news, like, oh, it's doing. So I tasked a satellite, and sure enough, like the week before, nothing was there. Week later, like a whole brigade, tanks and trucks. So I was like, I don't need the news to tell me, well, this is happening. I'm like, I see it. It's right there. Just like the same thing with the China. You're like, the Chinese rig in the Korean like exclusion zone. I don't need a reporter to tell me. I can see it. It's right there. So that's what I like about this too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting without getting too political. But we live in a world where there's questions over press and how much sort of good press we have left in the world. But all of a sudden, everyone can look. So you don't need to have an interpretation told to you. You can go see, well, there's a lot of work in the Philippines. China's slowly expanding some islands out there. And there's certain stories from either side. I don't know which is true, but I could look and I could see actually.
You can see.
This island's a little bit bigger than it used to be.
We're just putting the data out there, and that's what's great. It's kind of like if you look at the evolution where, the news was on like 1 hour a day decades ago. Like you tuned in for the 6 o'clock news and then you read it in the paper. And that was it. Now it's just 24/7. So we're just advancing, like the information is getting out there. And that's what I really like.
I think that's a good approach because you're not telling people what to think now. You're like, here's the image. You decide what you interpret.
It's facts and data.
Yeah.
It's like, here you go. Here you go.
I think that's great.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Love it.
Luke, it's been exciting and really informative.
Yeah, I'm fun.
So glad you came through. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Luke. Yeah, awesome. Great.